following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Call to order the June 24th meeting of the Cary Town Council to order. And I want to thank those who are joining us from their home this evening joining us as we continue to follow the governor's state of emergency orders. We are streaming tonight's meeting virtually. The majority of council is present with me here tonight. To meet the requirements of the remote meetings law, we do have one council member participating remotely through WebEx, and that council member is Councilmember Ed Yerha. Mr. Yerha, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Thank you for joining us remotely. And our first order of business is to recognize Councilmember Robinson, who will lead our ceremonial opening.
Thank you so much. Please join me in pledging allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we need a motion to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second. Discussion. Roll call vote, starting with Councilmember Yerha.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
Aye.
Councilmember Liu.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I vote affirmative, and we have an agenda. We now move to recognitions, reports, and presentations. And our first and only report is the best report is the Cary 150 History Moment, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Mr. Yerha has for us today. Mr. Yerha.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Tonight's topic is the Civil War in Cary. Although there was no Battle of Cary as such, Cary, or what soon in just a few years would become Cary, played a definite role. The war, of course, began on April 12, 1861, when Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter, South Carolina. And most people think that the war ended on April 9, 1865, when General Lee surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. But not so fast. The war was not yet finished, and the following 2 weeks would bring the closing moments of the war right through the heart of Cary. The day after Lee's surrender on April 10th, General Sherman was poised in Goldsboro with 90,000 well-equipped Union soldiers. That very day, he sent a cavalry of 5,000 men, led by General Kilpatrick, to attack General Johnston's 20,000 tired, hungry, and ill-equipped Confederate troops stationed 20 miles away in Smithfield. Informed of Kilpatrick's imminent attack, Johnston began withdrawing his troops westward toward Raleigh and Cary under the protection of a Confederate cavalry of 4,000 commanded by General Joseph Wheeler. Over the next 2 days, Johnston's Confederates traveled the almost 30 miles through Raleigh and then along the railroad tracks through Cary and Morrisville in an effort to reach Greensboro, where Confederate President Jefferson Davis had fled. When Johnston met with Davis, Davis showed no signs of quitting, and he talked of raising new armies instead. But other Confederate leaders, like North Carolina Governor Zebulon Vance, were not so confident. In fact, on the night of April 12th, Vance fled the capital and sought protection with Confederate General Hoke's division of about 5,000 men who were camped in and around, you guessed it, Cary. Vance was smart to flee, for hot on Johnston's trail the next day, April 13th, Union General Kilpatrick's men entered Raleigh, but Wheeler's Confederate troops counterattacked. Wheeler boasted, "I placed the Alabama Brigade in position. I met and countercharged the enemy, driving Kilpatrick back some 2 miles, killing or capturing some of the enemy." But Kilpatrick's Union forces recovered, and they resumed their attack. At noon on the 13th, General Kilpatrick sent this message to General Sherman from Asbury Station, which once stood right here on East Chatham Street. "Wheeler is fighting stubbornly. I shall press him hard," he said. 3 hours later, Kilpatrick sent another message to General Sherman, this time from Morrisville Station. "I have pressed the rebels back 2 miles beyond this town on the road to Chapel Hill. Wheeler's cavalry is totally demoralized." So on April 14th, the fighting ceased, and some soldiers scoured the area looking for food and valuables. They slaughtered Cary resident Wesley Jones's oxen for meat, and they stole his family's silver. Not all relations were sour, however. Sally Jones found a sick Union soldier in her barn, which stood not far from the Nancy Jones house. She nursed him back to health, and as a token of his appreciation, this Union soldier later sent her a gold ring. For the next 2 days, General Sherman set up his headquarters in Raleigh. To keep pressure on Confederate General Johnston, Sherman deployed his 17th Corps to Cary and his 15th Corps to Morrisville. The 17th Corps followed the railroad into Cary and were ordered to push empty railroad cars along the rails to detonate any unexploded bombs left on the track. Apparently they found none, for their commander's official report for that day merely stated, "We marched to Page's Station. Roads in bad condition and raining hard." En route to Cary, the 17th Corps learned that General Johnston proposed a surrender. And one soldier, Colonel Oscar Jackson, described how the men received the news. "The troops halted as they successively heard the cheering in front of them, and at the time it was raining a torrent, but mounted officers were galloping commands announcing the news. The men were throwing away their guns and the officers their hats in such wild excitement I never saw. Some of the same troops who now propose to surrender and give us peace, we've been fighting for almost 4 years." Yes, they were celebrating in Cary that night. Walter Hines Page was just 9 years old when he was astounded at the sight of some 30,000 Union soldiers marching past his home which stood on this very site of our council chambers. Walter, who would become Cary's most famous citizen and the eldest son of Frank and Kate Page, Cary's founders, never forgot this experience, especially when he became involved in a later conflict as U.S. ambassador to England during World War I. During peace negotiations, 17th Corps Commander General Francis Preston Blair, Jr. established his headquarters at the Nancy Jones House, which of course still stands on Chapel Hill Road. Although Blair served in the Union Army, he was Kentucky-born, and he spared Cary from the damage and looting that most southern towns experienced under Union occupation. Because he had studied at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, he still had friends in the area, and he expressed a particular fondness for this area. You see, even then, everyone liked Cary. His ability to keep peace among his men proved most challenging, though, on April 17th, when news of President Lincoln's assassination made many Union soldiers ready to move on Johnson at once. Despite powerful emotions, Blair's men remained mostly peaceful, and one soldier, identified only by the initials RM, wrote a poem about the fallen president that the Raleigh Standard published 2 days later. You'll notice the reference at the bottom to Page's Station, the name that many people used for Cary before it became Cary 6 years later. Peace negotiations between Confederate General Johnston and Union General Sherman also began on April 17th. That was at Bennett Place in Durham. After 3 rounds of negotiations, the final terms of surrender were signed. And after the largest and final surrender of the American Civil War on April 26th, a Union major stationed here in Cary wrote of the occasion, No pen can tell the feeling of joy and triumph that flooded every heart as the war-worn soldiers looked forward to peace and to home. And General Blair's 17th Corps departed Cary the following day. The war was finally over. And so is this presentation. Except to say thank you to those folks who are listed here who gave invaluable help to this presentation, and asking you to save the date, July 24th and July 31st. There's going to be a memorable and historic celebration of Cary's 150th anniversary in downtown Cary. And as always, you can find out more about this and about the other celebrations going on in town at cary150.org. I thank you for listening tonight, and now back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ed. Fascinating. I could listen to you talk all night, but we got to move on. All right, Public Speaks Out is our next item on the agenda. Instructions for submitting comments for our Public Speaks Out were attached to the posted agenda. Participants had the opportunity to send comments through email, the 311 online portal, and regular mail. I'll now open Public Speaks Out and call on our town clerk to summarize comments received and then call on any call-in speakers.
Thank you. No written comments, and our first call-in speaker is Jason Barron. Jason, would you confirm you're the correct speaker by giving your name and address?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I can hear the train loud and well, even though I am not present with you all tonight. It kind of brings me back. Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group, here on behalf of Wood Partners, as well as the applicant in rezoning case 19 REZ 06, which appears on your agenda this evening as a discussion item. This is an item that has been on your agenda before and received a fair amount of deliberation from the council. I won't rehash the robust set of conditions that are included in the case, nor go through the Planning and Zoning Board's finding of consistency, unanimous finding of consistency with the Cary Community Plan, nor the planning staff's finding of the same. I do want to note some things that have occurred since this case has been on your agenda. First, as you all are aware, Apple has announced that they are officially coming to RTP and are going to be located essentially just east of Parkside Town Commons on the other side of the tracks. That is a site that is in very close proximity to the site that these proposed apartments would be occupying, just 2.5 miles essentially from the site. So whereas there was already a significant demand for rental opportunities in this area, that has only been increased with Apple's announcement. Additionally, as it relates to the case, consistent with the conversations that occurred last time, there have been changes to the conditions. An additional 10 trees, upper story trees, have been added to the case, now providing for 60 upper story trees to be planted in the middle of the site, essentially establishing a grove within the middle of an apartment community, a very unique concept. 2 additional electric vehicle charging stations have been added to make a total of 6. And last but certainly not least, a workforce housing condition has been added to the case, something I'm very personally, passionately excited about. 15 of the units that will be leased as part of this community will be leased for a period of 20 years at less than 80% of AMI for Wake County. That's not the town of Cary, that's for Wake County. And 5 of those units will be less than 60%. And so the town knows that with the approval of these apartment communities, or with this apartment community, that there will be the provision of workforce housing. And this, to my knowledge, is the first time in the history of the town that a zoning condition has been proposed to provide a mix of at market rate, as well as workforce housing. And so we're very, very excited about the case and the way that it currently stands. And we respectfully request you all's approval, and I will be here on the phone in the event that you have questions when it comes up for discussion. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. Any other speakers?
Would you confirm you're the correct speaker by giving your name?
Hello, this is Carissa Johnson.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council, for your time today. I want to express my support of affordable housing efforts in Cary. Many in our community want to see our remarkable town really take advantage of any opportunity to lessen inequality to housing access, and for all Cary residents to have real opportunity to thrive regardless of their income. And I'm a 22-year Cary resident, most of it downtown. And while overwhelmingly the changes are terrific, the loss in affordable housing stock is concerning. And I know the town surveyed citizens in 2020 and found that affordable housing is a high priority, and those opinions inform the 2020-2025 consolidated plan. I believe a significant number of citizens support the town's affordable housing efforts. Many don't know about them, though, and also it's difficult to know what success looks like. Specifically, what are the measurable goals for each of the 4 objectives in the consolidated plan? How much progress has been made towards them, and what are the initiatives over the next 3.5 years to reach the goals? Of the 4 objectives, the first is, to preserve and increase the supply of affordable housing in Cary. Homes that were affordable for moderate income folks are being replaced with homes that are at a far higher price point. So I think there is some urgency in replacing them. The second objective in the consolidated plan is to increase community resources to build livable neighborhoods, and the town offers grants, and they're available to lower income homeowners to make needed repairs or necessary upgrades, maybe for accessibility, and I really applaud that, and I think that should be more widely publicized. The third objective in the plan is to increase housing choices for all residents, and our town must find traditional and some creative ways to shore up the housing stock at lower price points. And I understand there are many challenges and significant limitations to what you as municipal leaders can do, but I know that Cary is home to some of the best and brightest minds. The final objective in the plan is to increase public services for underserved populations, and our community can commit resources to programs, I think, that will allow seniors to age in place, support diversity, and allow those who serve our citizens to live within our town limits and to enjoy the amenities of the communities that they work in. So I thank you for your time, and I ask that council and staff continues to seek public input as they have been into affordable housing, and for the efforts going forward, consider setting tangible, measurable milestones so that the town is working towards a concrete goal. Again, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
That was all our speakers for today.
All right, we've concluded with Public Speaks Out, and we'll move on to the consent agenda. If you're following along, we're at item 4. For the benefit of people watching our meeting remotely, we'll review the consent agenda items. Please keep in mind that one vote approves all of these items. On the consent agenda, we have adjustment to the adopted meeting schedule, 21 REZO 3 Pleasant Grove Church Road Act 18 Comprehensive Plan Amendment and related consistency statement, 21 AO6 Page Road Investments LLC annexation, 21 REZO 2 Town Property Greenway and Utility Connection Dominion Estate Subdivision and related consistency statement, 21A02 Annex Town Property Greenway and Utilities Connection Dominion Estates Subdivision, Act 17 Town Code and LDO amendments related to and related consistency statement, 21A09 Aberley Alston LLC annexation, 21A10 Sutherland and Gooch annexation, resolution for tax collection for the 2022 fiscal year, acceptance of offer of dedication of property within the Stonewater subdivision. Would council members like any of these items pulled for discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Discussion. All in favor, starting with a roll call vote with Mr. Urha.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
Aye.
Councilmember Liu.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I vote aye, and the motion passes unanimously. We now move to public hearings. The same rules apply for public hearings that apply for Public Speaks Out, with one exception. Speakers now have 5 minutes for their comments. Instructions for submitting comments for tonight's public hearing were included in the public hearing notice. Participants had the opportunity to send comments through email, the 311 online portal, and regular mail, and all comments received before noon today were emailed to the council, and a printed copy was given to council at tonight's meeting. Our first public hearing is the consideration of a downtown development project involving exchange of property, and Economic Director Ted Boyd will present this item. Council may take action. Mr. Boyd.
Good evening, Council. For your consideration tonight is a downtown development project agreement involving the exchange of property. The staff report and attached documents cover this agreement in great detail, but I'd like to highlight three aspects: the background, the private and public development components, and the next steps. As a brief reminder, our downtown revitalization efforts have been part of a consistent vision and plan first articulated in 2001 with the Town Center Area Plan and now the Imagine Cary Community Plan. The Rogers redevelopment project falls within the Central Chatham sub-area, or heart and soul of downtown Cary, with retail shops and restaurants and great opportunity for infill and redevelopment that uses density and design to invite pedestrian activity that is necessary for a successful downtown. As you will notice on your screen, the project site is located within the block of Rogers Alley, East Chatham Street, North Walker Street, and Cedar Street. 149 and 159 East Chatham Street are owned by the development team of George Jordan and Jordan Gussenhoven, Northwoods Rogers Building, or NRB for the sake of this agreement and presentation. And Cary owns Rogers Alley and 109 North Walker Street. Many Cary residents know this site as the former Rogers Motel and Restaurant, owned and operated from the mid-1960s to early 1990s by Barbara Rogers and her late husband, Billy. There are many interesting stories about this property, and I'd encourage anyone interested to visit the Friends of the Page Walker to learn about those stories. They are quite interesting. But one thing that was very clear is that the Rogers Motel and Restaurant was a gathering place, and continuing that sense of place was important for the future plans of the Rogers redevelopment. I'd like to now highlight the private and public aspects of this development. NRB, the development team, will develop a 3-story mixed-use commercial building. It will have approximately 48,000 square feet, with 38,000 being office and 10,000 being ground floor retail. While technically only one building, the project was uniquely designed to look like two distinct buildings, so it might reflect a consistently inconsistent aesthetic of downtown. The public improvements are highlighted as Rogers Alley, sidewalk and bioretention, and Walker Alley. Walker Alley will be created as a part of the project, allowing vehicular and pedestrian flow, and also for parking between Walker and Rogers. The Rogers Alley, in its current state, is very utilitarian and designed with really only the car in mind. The improvements to Rogers Alley are to make it more pedestrian friendly while still maintaining some vehicular access. Rogers Alley could be easily closed to support an outdoor event, market, or live music. Additionally, new stormwater devices will be included within Rogers Alley improvements, aiding our continued efforts in our downtown. The improvements of Rogers Alley are, new wider sidewalks will extend along Rogers Alley, Chatham and Walker Street that will be consistent with sidewalk improvements that we've done in front of the Cary Theater. Additionally, this project will include a bioretention feature within the sidewalk improvements. This will also aid in stormwater as well as become an environmentally educational opportunity, bringing some of these efforts and attention to the street level where citizens can engage and see these things is really important. This sidewalk will also make use of a suspended paver system, which will allow for the street trees to have healthier, strong root systems and produce stronger, healthier trees. In order to facilitate these public and private improvements, a property exchange is a necessary part of this agreement. All of the specific details to include associated exhibits for this exchange are clearly described in the staff report. The summary of that information is that Cary will convey 4,392 square feet of property or property interests to NRB, and NRB will convey 4,654 square feet of property or property interest to Cary. Cary is receiving full and fair consideration in exchange for our property and property interests. Regarding the fiscal impact, Cary will reimburse NRB for Rogers Alley and sidewalk bioretention, which is estimated at approximately $1 million, and would use already appropriated funds within the DT 1143, along with funding included within the FY 2022 recommended budget. The Walker Alley improvements will be funded by the developer. Because this project is located within the Business Improvement District, is consistent with the advances of the Imagine Cary Community Plan vision of a vibrant, sustainable, and pedestrian-oriented downtown, and meets an acceptable degree of one or more of those policies, Cary will reimburse itself for bid funds for Cary's system development fees and transportation development fees estimated at $61,000. In terms of next steps, upon approval by council, Cary will initiate the process to close right-of-way, and Cary and NRB will execute the Downtown Development Project Agreement. A public hearing will be called for the July 22nd, 2021 council meeting to consider adopting a street closing order, and construction could begin as early as August of 2021. This project reflects an $18 million private investment in the core of our downtown, which will create new office and retail opportunities, which will continue to fuel our downtown revitalization. This concludes my presentation, and following the public hearing, I'm happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Now is the time for the public hearing for the downtown development project involving exchange of property, and I will call on
Yes.
Ms. Johnson to.
Yes, we had.
Okay, please.
Okay. We had one written comment from Gabe Talton in support of the Rogers redevelopment, and we also have one person on the line,
Okay.
and that person is Jordan Gussenhoven. And Jordan, would you confirm you're the correct speaker by giving your name and address?
This is Jordan Gussenhoven, 214 East Chatham Street, Cary.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you for the time. I just wanted to say that on behalf of George, Jordan, and myself, I'd like to thank the Town Council for their consideration of the Rogers redevelopment project. We are very excited about the opportunity to collaborate with the Town of Cary again on the revitalization of downtown. The Rogers Building and Rogers Alley are truly located at the heart of Chatham Street. We know this project will make a significant positive impact visually, through the new office employees and clients we'll bring to downtown, and through the new retail amenities available to local residents and visitors. We'd also like to thank the town staff who have been a pleasure to work with throughout this process and have been willing to explore new concepts, such as the Green Street stormwater measures that have been integrated in with the pedestrian experience, which will be visually attractive, environmentally beneficial, and will communicate the importance of sustainability to the Cary community, as well as the Rogers Alley Plaza, which will be both an aesthetic enhancement and will greatly improve the pedestrian experience in the most active block of downtown. And on another Cary historic moment, I will share that the original tin ceiling from the oldest portion of the Rogers Building, dating to circa 1920, has been preserved and will be integrated into the ceiling of the retail suite located on the site of the former ceiling. Having previously been covered by two other lower ceilings, it will be visible to pedestrians and guests for the first time in approximately 3/4 of a century. Again, thank you to the council for your consideration and your continued support of the revitalization of downtown.
Thank you. Any other speakers? All right, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions, comments, or motion. I'll just say that this is an exciting public-private partnership, and it's going to be fascinating when we have it built. And taking history into account, that was something new that I wasn't aware of. That's pretty exciting as well. I can't wait to see it, and I'm excited about supporting it. And I'll open it up to my colleagues for their comments.
I agree wholeheartedly, and if there's no other comments, I'd like to make a motion to
Please.
support staff recommendation.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion.
I will just say I'd like Ed to do a session on the history of the Rogers Motel and Restaurant. Sounds like there's some material there for you, Ed.
Could do that.
Thank you. On the condition, my vote is on condition of that.
Other comments? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, starting with Councilmember Urha.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
I vote affirmative.
Councilmember Lou.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith. Aye. Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I vote aye, and the motion is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Gustenhaven. Gosh, I'll get better at pronouncing your name, I promise. All right, we'll move to our second and last public hearing, 21A08 Stanley Martin Homes LLC annexation. Associate Planning Director Deborah Grannon will introduce the item. Council will not take action on this annexation, and the item will return to council at a future meeting for action. Ms. Grannon.
Consideration this evening is an annexation request for 5 properties totaling 19.7 acres located north of Green Hope School Road, east of Twyla Road, and south of Morrisville Parkway. The annexation includes 19.4 acres of intervening area. In this case, that includes area within the NC 540 and Twyla Road rights-of-way and vacant properties owned by the state of North Carolina and the town of Cary. The site is contiguous to Cary's corporate limits, and it's within the Twyla South Planned Development District zoning that was approved in May of 2020. The request is associated with a development plan that proposes to subdivide the assemblage for development of 80 multifamily dwellings and 58 townhomes. The approved PDD included an approximate 2.25 acre area designated for retail and office use. However, those uses are not part of the current development plan. The plan is currently in review and based on the provisions of the LDO can be approved administratively once staff determines that it meets all applicable LDO requirements. In accordance with the ordinance, the property must be annexed before the development plan can be approved. Following the public hearing, staff recommends that council defer final action on the annexation to a future meeting. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available for your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Grannon. Now's the time for the public hearing, 21A08 Stanley Martin Homes LLC annexation. And since there were no call-in speakers, just checking to make sure that's correct, nor submitted comments, I'm going to open and close the public hearing. And we'll open it up to council members for questions or comments from the staff or applicant. Seeing none, this will, as stated earlier, this will return to us at a future meeting for action. All right, thank you, Ms. Grannon. We now move to discussion items, and our first discussion item is the 19 REZ 06 Carpenter Fire Station Road PDD rezoning. This item was tabled at a previous council meeting, and council needs to remove it from the table prior to a presentation from staff. Is there a motion to remove 19 REZ Carpenter Fire Station Road PDD rezoning from the table?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second discussion. Roll call vote. Councilmember Yerha.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France.
Aye.
Councilmember Lou.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bush.
Aye.
I vote aye, and the motion is unanimous to remove it from the table. And so now Principal Planner Katie Dry will give the staff report, and council may take action. Ms. Dry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request to rezone 14.6 acres to allow the development of up to 300 multifamily units and 5,000 to 10,000 square feet of office. This request was tabled by Council at the March 25th Council meeting and has been placed on the agenda tonight for consideration at the applicant's request. I will provide a brief overview of the request and the changes to the application since March 25th. So starting with a brief summary, the request is asking for the development of 300 multifamily dwelling units, 5,000 to 10,000 square feet of office, 1.5 acres of open space planted with 60 upper story trees. There will be community gathering space above and beyond the LDO requirements and a parking ratio of 1.6 spaces per unit. There are also associated road improvements, a reduced streetscape on Carpenter Fire Station Road, and design commitments. And since the council saw this case in March, the applicant has made the following changes to their application. They have increased the electric vehicle charging stations from 4 to 6. They've increased the upper story trees to be planted within that 1.5 acre open space tract from 50 to 60 total. They've clarified that 45% masonry would be required for building facades fronting Carpenter Fire Station Road, Highway 55, and Indian Wells Road. And they've also added a workforce housing condition, which I'll talk more about on the next slide. The workforce housing condition provides that 15 workforce housing units will be offered for a period of 20 years to residents with an income of 60 to 80% area median income for the Raleigh MSA area. And at least 5 of the workforce housing units shall be offered to those with 60% AMI or less. The workforce housing condition will be enforced through recording a restrictive covenant at the Wake County Register of Deeds, and there will be an annual certification of compliance to Cary, which will be submitted starting the first full year following the final certificate of occupancy. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's representative, Jason Barron, remains on the line, and both he and I will be available for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dry. I know that council members have thought about this a lot, and we tabled it hoping there would be changes, and there were changes. And I'll start by saying I very much appreciate the changes. More trees, more charging stations, 15 workforce housing, 45% masonry on buildings. Those are all very positive changes, and I do hope we see that in the future. However, my concerns still remain as they did the first time. Is multifamily at this corner an appropriate use? I believe it is. I would prefer more of a mix, but I understand the applicant's trying to make the business model work. My concern is the intensity. Is there a compelling reason to approve this amount of intensity at that location? And in my opinion, not. So the changes, while very positive and very good, just aren't enough to overcome the intensity, in my opinion. So I will not be supporting this proposal, and I would love to hear from my colleagues.
Okay, well, I will go first. As this council knows, I am very supportive of things associated with affordable housing. And I just want to speak a bit about this development. First off, affordable housing isn't a Cary problem alone. It's a nationwide problem. It's a Wake County problem. And we cannot build our way out of it alone either. Public sector, great places like Habitat for Humanity or DHIC just can't do it. What we need are developers like this who are willing to have public-private partnerships where they help address this problem. And to put it in the scope of what is 60 to 80% AMI, that, the average median income in Wake County is about $60,000 for a single and about $84,000. It's a pretty high income level. So if someone wants to live in Cary today, their average price for a one-bedroom apartment is over $1,200, eating up a significant part of their income. So what this means, if this were to pass, is that we could have people like police officers, firefighters, teachers, entry-level kids who are coming out of college, being able to afford to live and work in the town that we love. Now, do I absolutely love this development? It's hardly the case that I absolutely ever love one, right? That's what is the difficult part of our job here, is the compromise. I think they've done a lot. I wasn't thrilled with the reduction in streetscape. I would like to see them do more environmental programs, but they have put forward the kind of effort that I like to see a private developer do. And they've added charging station. They've added a significant number of trees. And this will be the first in Cary developer-provided condition for affordable housing. And I think, from my perspective,
This is the kind of partnership that we need to see in order to address it. So is it perfect? No. But do I think that they've come a really long way? Absolutely. And I hope that the rest of us will join in supporting this and see that an additional 15 families that could not have afforded to live in Cary can now afford to do so.
Okay, other comments?
Well, I think I'll just echo that, you know, we can't get lost in the pursuit of perfect. You know, we have seen a lot of changes here, and that includes environmental changes too. I mean, there's, I think what we're learning as a town is we have to continue to look at how we can entice those incentives so that you can't codify everything. You know, you have to have guidelines, but I think somewhere as we look at the lessons learned from this, we've got to look at what can we learn, you know, as a staff, what can we do to put in our zoning codes and our requirements things that would be make it more attractive, as you said, Lori, for those partnerships to step forward. So, you know, I think personally, I'm surprised at how much has changed in this, and I'm comfortable moving forward. You know, the balance of what are the trade-offs of asking for more environmental conditions. Well, they've added some of the trees. They've added some other things. I think this is a good first step. So, you know, as you, Lori, said, I think, you know, we have to take those, we have to reward those aspects, and I'll be supportive of it also. I'll just leave it at that.
Other comments?
I'll say on this project, I feel like I've been more conflicted than normal. Sometimes I look at a project, I'm like, this is, you know, clearly, you know, good for the community. I can see that this is better than something else we might get. I want to like this project. I mean, I've tried really hard to like this project. I don't think I just am not there. And I do admire them for contributing the workforce housing component. We tease Jack a lot because he says 4951, and I for once feel like I'm in his shoes. You know, I feel like I'm really on that borderline. But you know, I just have to think about how this is going to be, you know, in perpetuity for our community. This apartment complex is going to be here for the rest of our lifetimes, and you know, what is that like with the buildings so close to the road? Both of the buildings. I mean, I asked them to entertain the idea of, you know, repositioning those buildings, and they made a really good effort at trying to accomplish it, but it couldn't be done. And you know, maybe to your point, Harold, maybe it's the wrong intensity for this site because they can't accomplish, you know, getting those buildings a little further from the road. I just worry how this is going to sit. So, in the end, even though I'm a 4951, I just can't get over it and do the project, you know, support it. But I admire any of you with different opinions. I'm not like going to go home and cry tonight if it passes. It's just, you know.
Other comments?
I mean, I hope it does pass. I mean, I liked it the first time we saw it and was prepared to support it then. And I think with some of the changes they've made, I'm more prepared to support it now. I think it actually, as far as the intensity goes, being so close proximity to, you know, RTP and Apple and everything else, I actually think it makes a lot of sense. So I think they've gone a long way to address council's concerns. I applaud them for the workforce housing condition. I would agree with Ms. Bush's comments. I mean, this is the first one of these we've seen. I hope it's not the last. And I just, you know, I don't know what else they could do to make it a better project while, you know, making the economics work and meeting the need, you know. So I like it, and I hope it passes.
I'm really torn on this one. So in my mind, I was going back and forth, and I really appreciate the efforts the applicant has put forward, and I really like the component adding affordable housing units to help us address the housing crisis in our town, in our county. And I would love to see more of that in the future. I was really hoping that more environmental features could be provided in this development. Either it's a green rooftop or solar panels could be put on for this site. And we didn't get that. We do have more electrical vehicle charging stations. I really appreciate that effort. So I'm really torn on this one.
The only thing I would say to you on that one is 15 families or a solar roof or green roof that might be able to be put in later, right, when it's maybe cost effective. It's hard for me to weigh the difference there. If you're okay with the extra 10 trees and you're okay with the extra charging stations, I would ask you to consider the fact that this will make a world of difference for 15 families that could not afford to live in Cary. So people versus a green roof, when they already added charging stations and 20% more trees, I think they've, I'm a believer in the compromise. We each do what we can to get to the middle.
Well, I mean,
Clearly, I care.
there's always arguments for and against what you just said, and I believe they could have done more, exactly like Ms. Lou said. They could have done more in affordable housing. They could have done more with the environment. So just the other.
I have a question for staff.
Sure, absolutely.
When you were describing how this will be, this workforce housing condition will be managed through Wake County, there was a comment about compliance. And my question is, what's the consequence if they're not in compliance? Take the worst case, all of a sudden you do an annual review and you're not in compliance. Is it a slap on the wrist that says naughty, naughty, or is it, so the question to the staff is, what's the compliance? What's the consequence of not complying?
A non-compliant,
Definitely a Lisa question.
yeah.
Yeah, so the way we have the condition was offered by the applicant is that, first of all, they are putting restrictive covenants on the property, and that would require the 15 units to be in place for 20 years. And so we'll get a letter from their attorney stating that they put those covenants in place. And then secondly, as you mentioned, there is an annual certification requirement. And so if that documentation is not turned in, they're in violation of their zoning, and we could pursue that through our zoning enforcement process, which includes fines and that sort of thing.
Okay, so we still have a hand in that?
Yes.
Would be, okay. Hypothetical.
Mr. Yerha, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I guess I'm the only one left. Although I'd like to see a reduction in the number of units, I have really no problem with the overall use. As far as details or conditions, the only condition I absolutely dislike is the reduction in the streetscape. But almost everything else is positive. I'm especially pleased with the groundbreaking addition, no pun intended there, the groundbreaking addition of workforce housing. So the 5149, I'm actually 50.5 to 49.5. But looking at everything and thinking about this for months and months, I'm inclined to support the request.
Okay. Are we ready for a motion?
So I'll make a motion to approve 19 REZ06 Carpenter Fire Station PDD rezoning.
Is there a second?
And
Just for clarification, I think we actually need to read
Oh, is
Oh.
there a new?
Thank you.
motion.
Thank you, sorry. I move that we approve the statement of consistency as attached to the motion document for 19 REZ06 Carpenter Fire Station PDD rezoning and the rezoning 19 REZ06 Carpenter Fire Station PDD rezoning.
Is there a second?
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor, starting with a roll call vote. Councilmember Yerha.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem France?
Aye.
Councilmember Lou?
Nay.
Councilmember Robinson?
No.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Bush?
Aye.
And I am a no, which means it passes 4-3. All right. Thank you, Ms. Dry. And thank you, council, for working on this. We have a better product than what was originally proposed. And I think that has a lot to do with council and staff working on this. And thanks to the applicant for making it a better product. Okay, our second discussion item is a proposed new council district boundaries map. And Town Attorney Lisa Glover will present the staff's report, and council may take action. Ms. Glover.
Thank you, and good evening, council. We're here tonight for you to consider adopting a new electoral district map for Cary's town council districts. Just to remind you of the process, in January, we hired an independent, nonpartisan team to assist staff with redistricting. In March, council established guiding principles for creating 4 council districts. And normally, we would receive census data in March in time for redistricting for the fall elections. Release of the data was delayed this year and is not expected until after the normal candidate filing period has closed. So in April, and after Mayor Pro Tem Don France suggested this idea, we presented a plan to you to redistrict now with current data that we have instead of waiting for the census data. And this is specifically permitted by state law. So in May, as directed by council, we held a public hearing on a proposed new electoral district map. We did receive a few comments at the hearing indicating a preference for keeping neighborhoods together. Our consultants have created a new district map that balances populations, leaving districts A and D with a little bit of room to grow, and follows the guiding principles you endorsed in March, including keeping neighborhoods together in the same district. Now, tonight you're considering new district maps, but you all may have questions as well about the timing of the elections this year. Senate Bill 722 passed the House and Senate earlier this month and would require Cary's election to move to March of 2022. However, that bill is still awaiting action by the governor, and so it has not yet become law. We have been working with our delegation and others in the General Assembly to explore other methods to keep Cary's election on track for October if Senate Bill 722 does become law. So this concludes staff's presentation. We're available for your questions, and there is a revised ordinance at your seat for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Glover. I'll open it up to council members for questions or comments or a motion.
I will just say really fast that I really appreciate the process that we took. We've had these conversations before in previous years when we were doing the redistricting, and of all the times, this is by far the least political approach we've ever taken by having this third-party organization that's not even in our area. They don't know any of us. They don't know Cary. They just did it by the numbers, and I think it is so apolitical. I think that's really healthy. It's dramatic difference for people who are familiar with the districts. This is a big shift, particularly for A and D. It's it's going to be disruptive to a lot of people. People are going to be like, what? Now I'm in A or now I'm in D. It's going to be confusing, but for the most part, I think that this is very good, and I think it was a very worthwhile endeavor the way that it was done.
And to your point, just to emphasize what you said, council and staff were involved. Well, staff was involved, but the consultants drew the map. We didn't draw the maps. And so we were not involved. And so that took all the politics out for anybody that's watching and didn't quite catch that. I think that's a huge point that you made. So other comments or questions?
Yeah, anybody else? I didn't want to jump in.
No, please.
Yeah, I think I echo those comments. I mean, I think it was apolitical. I think typical of the Cary way. We tried to do it as factual as we can. And to be clear, the consultants came up with 2 options. And I'm not here to rehash all of that, but I was, as I said at a previous meeting, I was a little disappointed that we met the letter of the law by the open, the public notice and so forth. And I respect that we were accelerating the process in the hopes of being able to have an October election. So in that, we're all in agreement. But I am personally disappointed that we didn't do a better job of communicating to our broader citizenry that brief time. I think we could have done more, as we've done with other things. And I'm not here to beat it to death, but it's enough for me that I think that if we had just had clear information online, if we'd had not necessarily a longer period for public notice, because we're under a time constraint, and I respect that. I just think we could have done that a little bit better, and maybe had gotten some other feedback from folks about the two options. We didn't really do that as ideally as I would have hoped, and that's just my opinion on it. So,
I have a question for our staff. When we get the census results, so, I mean, do we plan to make minor adjustment or modifications to the map?
So when we get the new data in later in the fall, we will look at that. And we will then, make sure that the districts we have drawn are still consistent with, as we talked about in previous meetings, that 5% rule, that, we'll find out what the census thinks our total population is, do the math, and make sure each district is within plus or minus 5%. If they are, then we won't need to take any further action. If we find that we've missed the mark and we're outside the 5% boundary, then we would have to take a look at tweaking things again.
And so to follow a scenario related to that, let's assume that we have an October election and everything is decided and the census data shows that our districts were incorrect. The new data would change the districts for the next election.
Correct, 2023.
Just wanted to make sure
And also,
everybody's
Mayor,
aware.
we are drawing our data from essentially the same data sets the census used. So we could be wrong or off, but the
Not likely.
likelihood is very low.
Yeah.
Well, we got the draft census data too, right?
Do we have the draft census data?
No, we don't. We do know the census blocks, so we know we're using the right geography, the same geography the census is going to use when we get their official numbers. So we have that.
Any other?
Yeah, I want to just reiterate that just like the previous discussion we had with the previous case, we may have a different point of view, but I think we can all take pride that it was in full sunshine, that we did it open. We're not dealing with the issues that some of our neighboring cities are dealing with. And that I think I'm in absolute agreement with everybody here. We just, personally, I'll have a difference of opinion on the options taken. So.
Other comments? Mr. Yurha, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I realize this is quite a minority opinion, but it is my opinion that the best way to fairly and accurately represent our citizens, we should wait until the actual census data comes in, and we should delay the October election, just as the 30-some other municipalities are planning to do. It would be consistent with the advice of the State Election Board and with the recent action taken by the state legislature. So, since I prefer to wait for the actual census data before redrawing our boundaries, I don't see the need to do it tonight. Although I respectfully understand the reason being presented, and I respectfully respect the work done to reach this decision in the map that's in front of you. But due to the fact that I think we need to wait for the real data to do any real redrawing, I'm going to respectfully vote no.
Okay. Any other comments, or are we ready for a motion?
I move that we adopt the ordinance to revise electoral district boundaries that have been located at our seat.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, starting with Councilmember Yurha?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem France?
Aye.
Councilmember Liu?
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
No.
Councilmember Bush?
Aye.
I vote affirmative, and the motion passes 5-2. All right, thanks everyone for working on that, Ms. Glover. I know you're spending a lot of time on this issue, and we really appreciate your efforts.
And still is.
It still is, that's right.
And may I say something really fast?
Yes.
Hi, it's Jennifer over here.
Where's that voice?
I think that we will need to do a really good outreach job, Jack, to your point, to all the citizens who are affected by this. I mean, I used to have, as my district, everything to the west of 55, and all of that now
Is in D.
is in Yalu's group and under her purview. And you're going to do a great job serving that area. It's a really tough area to serve because it's so fast growing and there's so much development pressure there. But, you know, it's been an honor to be able to serve that part of Cary. And, but I want to make sure that everybody gets word of it. And then, of course, now I have a bunch of area to the east that I haven't served for a long, long time. A few of those precincts I haven't never served, but most of them I've served before in the past. But you know, the last thing I'd like to say is, you know, to any citizens who have concern, this is a really great working group. We do a really good job at working collaboratively with each other. We're very balanced politically. I don't think that you know, people who watch our meetings feel like we're really supercharged with politics, and that's really healthy. And all of the council members, even though we have these 4 districts, we all behave in a way that we represent all of the citizens of Cary. So I don't want people to feel like, oh, I'm not in Jennifer's district anymore, I can't reach out to her. Of course, you know, I still want people to reach out, and we're really trying to do what's best for the whole of Cary.
Thank you. Very well said.
Well said.
Yep.
Mayor, if I had a couple.
Yes, please.
We'll certainly work to do a public education campaign on the new maps. And I also want to thank Susan Moran, who was the only senior staff member that had previous experience in this.
Oh.
Wow.
And so who really led us and worked great with Lisa. And certainly we have a lot of great staff in the planning department, Deborah Grana, et cetera. So it's, because it was something, it's kind of exciting, had something I'd never been involved in before. And what was great is I didn't have to be involved in it now. But at least got to watch it up there. So it's a real honor to be able to work for a group of people that completely depoliticize something that even the least political groups do a little bit. I mean, it was completely absent, just amazing. So appreciate the council's, the way you govern.
Thank you, Mr. Stegall, and thanks, Ms. Moran, for all your help. All right, we'll move now to a big last item, and that's our fiscal year 2022 recommended budget. And we'll call on our Chief Financial Officer, Karen Mills, to present this item, and council hopefully will take action. If not, we're going to have other meetings. So we need to take action tonight.
You will.
Ms. Mills.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, the FY 2022 Manager's Recommended Budget is before you for adoption. The information packet at your seat is the same budget to the dollar that was presented to you on May 13th. The packet also includes copies of the operating and capital budget ordinances for your review. The FY 2022 recommended budget includes authorization for operating and capital expenditures totaling $400.1 million. This total budget is 6.4% less than the prior year budget. The operating budget component, which supports daily operations and services for citizens, increased 1.8% from the prior year. The recommended budget decreases the property tax rate by ½ cent from 35 cents per $100 of assessed valuation to 34.5 cents. The tax base growth realized in Wake County's property revaluation process last year, coupled with a strong local economy and sales tax growth this year, give us the ability to recommend the ½ cent decrease, and it's equal to a tax levy that is $1.7 million less. This recommendation does include a $1 monthly solid waste and recycling fee increase, so that it goes from $19.50 to $20.50 per month, bringing the program's cost recovery to 90%. The FY 2022 recommended budget also includes utility rate changes that increase the average residential bill by approximately 2.5%. This budget focuses on maintaining service levels and infrastructure while moving forward with the Shaping Cary's Tomorrow bond projects and other major projects. It also maintains our employee authorization count at just over 1,286 full-time equivalents. Funding is also included for our nonprofit partners that deliver services to our citizens. You'll recall that we first brought you this recommendation on May 13th. We have since held the one legally required public hearing, as well as a second public hearing, and we've shared with you all the comments that we've received. And with that, Mayor, I'll turn it over to you for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mills. I'll open it up to council members for questions or comments. I think I said this at the public hearing, but years ago, and those of us who've been around for many years, we used to have work session after work session after work session on the budget. And I know that staff puts a lot of effort in listening and understanding what council needs and what the people of Cary need. And so now our budgets are proposed pretty much close to what we're looking for, and they're just take small tweaks. And that's light years away from where we used to be. And so the budget process isn't painful. It used to be, oh no, we're going into budget season, and it's just not like that anymore. So thanks to Ms. Mills and her staff and Mr. Stiegel, everyone involved in the budget. And I know it's not easy for folks that don't understand. Fiscal year starts on July 1st, and guess what? That's when they start working on the next budget. So it's not like they can take a breath. They just keep working and working. So it's an amazing effort, and I totally support the staff's recommended budget.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, there is one thing I'd just like to share with my council colleagues. I was lucky enough to be invited to talk to the Leadership Cary folks, and I think a lot of you have done that before. And there was a comment by one of the attendees that said, I asked them what they loved about Cary. What is it that, why are you taking this class? Why are you taking this time out of your day to be here? And one of the folks that attended, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, said that the thing that he liked the most was that our council and our staff were were excellent at what they did, that he didn't pay as much attention to what went on in Cary because he had the faith and trust in government. And you don't actually hear those words. But he said, you're great with our money, you're great investing in the future, and what you do shows. And that's why I love living here, that's why I love working here. And it was a real testament to not just the work that we do at this table, but what all of staff does every single day. And so I wanted to share that with all of them because a lot of what they do is behind the scenes, and they didn't get to hear that.
All right.
And so thank you for every staff member, from the public works folks to the police officers to finance to everyone. You make Cary what it is today.
Yeah, and I'll share a little tidbit of something I had this week. So I meet with the Wake mayors once a month, and we have what we call a round table discussion. What topic would you like to hear? I said, I'd like to hear about everybody's budget and their tax rate. And of course, when it got to me, it was easy to say, we had the highest quality of life and the lowest tax rate for like the 13th year in a row. And of course, I didn't get any applause. They didn't like that at all, but it's the truth. And it has a lot to do with all the work the staff is doing. And
Appreciate it, Mayor.
And I think it's the lowest in 30 years, so.
Yeah.
Really?
We have a good, who's been lower than us? I mean, it just hasn't happened.
Some of us haven't been around here for 30 years to remember that. That's why I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks look at a budget and they look at it, it's very static. This is the number, and we're kind of locked in. And I think the other thing that has made us very responsive to the community is there's a kind of a rolling aspect to the budget. We review it. Things do come up that were unplanned. Things happen. And all of a sudden there's an opportunity, be it with the environment or affordable act, doesn't matter what it is. If the opportunity presents itself, the flexibility from my perspective is there, that we have the opportunity, and we don't hide behind, well, it's not in the budget type of thing. And I think that's something that surprises a lot of people. of course we have a budget, and of course we try to stick to that. But with our quarterly meetings and our quarterly updates on, making adjustment, line item adjustments and all that, we have a very mobile and very flexible budget. Of course we stay within guidelines, but I think we've recognized over the years we can't always remember or forecast or plan for every single thing that might come up unexpectedly. And I think that's the other thing that Cary does so well, that we can be responsive to that issue and we can jump on it. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's kind of my
I
perspective.
was going to make a similar observation. I didn't think of the word static. I think I think everything you said is very true. I was thinking of lumpy, because like other councils, what happens is they go on a retreat, right? And that's when they kind of do this like purge of everything they care about, and they talk about it, and then they do their budget, and it's very lumpy. It's like it's a process that a lot of our peers and other governments dread. And I would have to say that we really have a lot to thank our staff, Sean in particular, because he changed that process when he came here by having these quarterly reviews where in these quarterly meetings where we get together, we're reiterating what's important to us, we're having dialogues with our staff on an ongoing basis, and as you said, we are bringing up these budget issues, so it is not a lumpy process. I remember going to the Triangle J Council of Government meeting and telling the other 30-some people at the table from other governments, yeah, we're going to move to this idea of doing these quarterly budgets, and where we talk about the budget as kind of a rolling budget. And everybody's like, oh, that sounds awful, budget all the time. Let us know how that goes, ha, ha, ha. And it's been really great. It's been really, really good. And I think that is a lot to do with why we have found this to be a much easier process, is because we are talking about it all the time. And Sean, that was, a convention that you brought to Cary, and I think it was a really great, successful move. And maybe other governments will start looking at this and going, yeah, maybe we should do that too.
Yeah, and I have a question for Sean. And how could we manage to cut the tax after pandemic? I mean, a year ago, we wouldn't expect that. This is totally not what we were expecting. And
well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I was going to comment on that. For anyone that's listening, for all the citizens, I know why. Unfortunately, I know why. An American citizen might assume that a tax cut was for political reasons. I can assure you that wasn't the case in Cary. It's really this simple. We had more money than we needed, so we gave some back. And that's exactly why we did it. The reason why we were able to, y'all, is the council took a very responsible position, in my view, last year by not only raising taxes on behalf of the citizens to pay for bonds, in the future. So that was reflecting the overwhelmingly approved bond issue, but also to prepare us for continuity of services in case at that time it looked like the pandemic was going to be, pretty bad. What turned out is arguably one of, if not the best year Cary's ever had economically. The economic engine of Cary is just rolling right now, and it's it's producing and creating a lot of wealth. That's a really great thing. Causes a problem in some areas like affordable housing, construction prices, but overall, it is certainly good for the town's finances. And so that's why we were able to do it. And then year in and year out, the departments, even though they can, if they need to, because we trust them, they don't spend their money. They spend most of it, but they leave 5-10% back. If they don't need it, they give it back. Which again, and we also reward them for that, because in other governments, it's very typical, like, use it or lose it. What we don't do is lower their budget then the next year as their punishment for coming under, because they might need it the next year. We simply just trust them. And we hire great people. And then the people that work in Cary, you feel it. You feel responsibility to build upon what the people that have come before you. I know the council feels that way based on their predecessors. I certainly feel that way, and every staff member feels that way. You come to Cary and you feel like you've been charged with a great, great responsibility that goes beyond just working, at least for me, but I know it's shared, it goes beyond even what you feel you need to do as a civil servant in general. It's a very special honor to be able to serve the citizens of Cary, and we all take that very seriously.
We have two that haven't spoken? Mayor Pro Tem and 10035.
Huh?
reconvene our council meeting at this time. We have no further business, so I declare this council meeting over. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.